Man, I don't know about you, but it really feels like the closer we get to the new NBA season, the more questions start piling up around this Timberwolves team. And today is one of those days where there are two huge stories that every Wolves fan needs to hear, because both of them could completely change how we look at this season. The first one is all about this roster. There are so many expectations, so many new faces, so many changes. But there are also some massive question marks that could decide whether this team is actually ready to chase a championship or if we're setting ourselves up for another frustrating ending. Every key player seems to have something to prove, and honestly, some of those questions are a lot bigger than people are talking about. Then we've got the second story. This one has been hanging over the entire NBA for weeks now. A situation involving one of the biggest names the league has ever seen just took another interesting turn. And the latest insider update could finally tell us where things are heading. The Timberwolves have been right in the middle of all the speculation, but something important has changed behind the scenes. And if the reports are accurate, it could completely reshape what fans should expect going forward. So if you're a real Timberwolves fan and you want to stay on top of everything happening around this team, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and come be part of this community. I'm Henry, and Timberwolves Daily News is still a brand new channel with our first goal of reaching 100 subscribers. If you truly believe in the future of this franchise and want to say you were here from the very beginning, this is the perfect time to join us. Now let's get into the first story, because honestly, this isn't just another offseason discussion. These are the biggest questions surrounding every player on Minnesota's standard roster. And how these questions get answered could determine whether this team is fighting for an NBA championship or falling short of expectations. Let's start with the biggest addition of the offseason, LaMelo Ball. There's no doubt the Timberwolves needed another elite playmaker, and that's exactly why the organization pulled the trigger on the trade. The talent has never been the question with LaMelo. The concern is whether he can stay on the floor. Last season, he played 72 games, which was an encouraging sign. But it was only the second time in his entire NBA career that he appeared in more than 55 games. That's why this season feels so important. If LaMelo stays healthy, Minnesota suddenly has another dynamic creator alongside Anthony Edwards and becomes a legitimate championship contender. But if injuries strike again, the ceiling changes dramatically. Instead of looking like one of the NBA's elite teams, the Wolves probably become just another dangerous playoff team, hoping to make a deep run. Then there's Anthony Edwards, and this might surprise some fans. Everyone already knows he's one of the league's best offensive players, but the biggest question isn't about his scoring. It's about whether he can finally become the complete two-way superstar many people already believe he is. According to the numbers from Cleaning the Glass, Minnesota's defense was actually 5.7 points per 100 possessions worse when Edwards was on the floor last season. That's not what you expect from a player with his athleticism. The good news is, we've already seen what he's capable of defensively when he's fully locked in. With LaMelo Ball expected to take more of the playmaking responsibilities offensively, Anthony should have more energy to become that disruptive perimeter defender every single night. If he commits on both ends consistently, he could take another massive leap. Moving to Ayo, his role is also changing. Since arriving in Minnesota, his versatility has been extremely valuable. But with LaMelo running the offense, Ayo is expected to spend much more time playing as a wing instead of a combo guard. His ball handling isn't quite strong enough to run an offense full-time, but his toughness, defense, length, outside shooting, and ability to attack downhill make him an intriguing option as a smaller wing. The Wolves believe he can thrive in that role, but now he has to prove it over an entire season. Another fascinating situation involves Jaden McDaniels. Many people expected that after losing Julius Randle and Nez Reid, McDaniels would simply slide over to power forward. But head coach Chris Finch recently pushed back against that idea, saying he doesn't currently envision McDaniels starting at the 4. That creates a huge question. Does Minnesota keep him defending opposing guards and wings, where he's arguably one of the NBA's best point-of-attack defenders? Or do they eventually move him into the frontcourt because of the roster's lack of size? Whatever decision they make won't just affect McDaniels. It'll change the entire defensive identity of this team. Speaking of defense, nobody may have more pressure than Rudy Gobert. Even at 34 years old, Gobert remains one of basketball's elite defenders. Last season, the Timberwolves' defense was an incredible 11.8 points per 100 possessions better whenever he was on the court, but with a smaller lineup around him and fewer natural power forwards available, Minnesota may end up asking Gobert to erase even more defensive mistakes than before. That's a dangerous balancing act. He's still capable of protecting the rim at an elite level, but expecting him to cover every defensive breakdown for 82 games and another playoff run is asking a lot from any player. Off the bench, Bones Hyland suddenly becomes much more important. Last September, he barely earned the final roster spot, but eventually carved out a role as an instant offense scorer. The problem has always been consistency. When his shot isn't falling, his defensive limitations become much harder to hide, and that's exactly why he disappeared from the playoff rotation last year. Now, with less proven bench depth, Minnesota may actually need Bones to provide reliable scoring every single night. Another player facing an interesting challenge is Terrence Shannon Jr. late last season and throughout the playoffs. The Wolves had success putting the ball in Shannon's hands and letting him create offense. But now, there's a different reality. With Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball, Jaden McDaniels, and Ayo Dosunmu all needing touches, can Shannon still play that same on-ball role? If he can't produce efficiently enough with those opportunities, he'll have to prove he can become an effective off-ball player, something he struggled with previously. Then we get to Jaylen Clark. Everyone already knows he can defend. His intensity on the perimeter has never been questioned. The issue is offense. He shot just 32.7% from three-point range last season, after shooting over 43% the previous year. If he simply knocks down open threes consistently, he'll become an important part of Minnesota's rotation. If not, earning regular minutes becomes much more difficult. One of the more underrated storylines involves Josh Green. Team president Tim Connolly recently hinted that Minnesota could use some unexpected internal options to solve its power forward problem. Josh Green may actually be one of those answers. Standing 6'6" with a 6'10" wingspan, Green has built his reputation as a versatile wing defender. While he probably isn't the long-term solution at power forward, don't be surprised if Chris Finch experiments with him there throughout the season. The next name is one that fans are incredibly excited about: Joan Behringer. At just 19 years old, he'll likely become Rudy Gobert's primary backup because of Minnesota's lack of frontcourt depth. The talent is obvious, but so are the concerns. He averaged 5.4 fouls per 36 minutes last season and only logged 314 total NBA minutes. Can he stay disciplined? Can he become a consistent lob threat? And perhaps most importantly, even if he plays well during the regular season, can he actually be trusted during the playoffs? Those are huge questions for such a young player. Then there's Donte DiVincenzo. After suffering an Achilles injury, nobody wants to rush expectations. The encouraging part is that, much like Jason Tatum, DiVincenzo underwent surgery less than 24 hours after tearing his Achilles, giving him at least a chance to return sometime this season. If he does come back, Minnesota would regain one of its best shooters and smartest connective players. But considering the severity of the injury, everyone understands if his recovery takes longer. Minnesota's rookie Isaiah Evans, selected with the 33rd overall pick, also faces an uphill battle. Initially, it looked like he'd have a legitimate path into the rotation. Then the Timberwolves traded for LaMelo Ball less than 24 hours later. Now it's hard to find consistent minutes unless injuries create an opportunity. Still, the organization believes he has long-term potential. Finally, there's veteran Trey Lyles. His signing surprised plenty of people because he didn't play in the NBA last season. For nearly a decade, though, Lyles was a reliable stretch four, capable of spacing the floor. The question now is simple. Does he still have enough left in the tank to help this team, or will he primarily serve as an experienced veteran at the end of the bench, similar to the role Joe Ingles played? When you step back and look at the entire roster, it's pretty clear why there's so much excitement surrounding Minnesota. This team has star power, it has depth, it has championship aspirations. But almost every important player enters the season carrying at least one major question that still needs to be answered. And honestly, Wolves fans will probably spend the next few months finding out whether those answers lead to a title run or another season full of what-ifs. Now, let's move to the second story, because the LeBron James situation just took another interesting turn. And while the Timberwolves haven't officially been eliminated, the latest reporting suggests Minnesota may be losing ground in one of the biggest free agency races we've ever seen. As of today, LeBron has been without a team since June 30th, when his agent, Rich Paul of Clutch Sports, informed the Los Angeles Lakers that the four-time MVP would not be returning to the franchise, officially ending an incredible 8-year run in Los Angeles. We've now reached day 25 of the LeBron watch, and while everyone is still waiting for his final decision, NBA insider Brett Siegel believes the picture is becoming much clearer. According to Siegel, the Timberwolves technically have not been told they're out of the running. That's the good news. The bad news is that the overwhelming belief around the league is that LeBron ultimately will not choose Minnesota. Siegel explained that the teams still viewed as the real contenders are the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Golden State Warriors, the Miami Heat, and the Philadelphia 76ers. He also addressed Minnesota and Denver directly, saying that while neither team has officially been eliminated, league executives and people around the NBA simply don't expect LeBron to end up with either franchise. That's obviously disappointing to hear if you're a Wolves fan, because this organization didn't just sit back and hope. They made a real push. Reports say Minnesota contacted LeBron multiple times after his Lakers exit, presenting him with a vision of competing immediately for another NBA championship. And honestly, from a basketball standpoint, a lot of people believed the fit made perfect sense. Putting LeBron alongside Anthony Edwards, newly acquired LaMelo Ball, Rudy Gobert, and Jaden McDaniels would instantly give Minnesota one of the most talented starting groups in the entire league. Many analysts even argued that the Timberwolves may have offered LeBron his best opportunity to compete for a fifth championship. But according to Brett Siegel, basketball may not be the biggest factor in this decision. The belief around the league is that LeBron's choice will ultimately come down to familiarity, long-standing relationships, and personal comfort. That's why the Cleveland Cavaliers and Miami Heat continue to receive so much attention. Both organizations are places where LeBron has already won championships and built lasting relationships. Then there's the Golden State Warriors, where he'd have the opportunity to play alongside two of his closest friends in the NBA, Stephen Curry and Draymond Green. Even with all of Minnesota's recent success, those personal connections may simply outweigh everything else. What's especially interesting is just how much effort the Timberwolves made behind the scenes. Team insider John Kravchinski revealed that this wasn't just a front office recruitment. According to him, Anthony Edwards personally reached out to LeBron during the process. He reportedly made phone calls trying to convince James to seriously consider Minnesota. John Kravchinski also reported that LaMelo Ball had conversations with LeBron as well, with both stars doing everything they could to sell the vision of joining this young, talented roster. That tells you how badly the players wanted this to happen. It wasn't just management making presentations. The locker room itself was actively recruiting one of the greatest players in basketball history. Head coach Chris Finch also addressed the rumors earlier this summer. Rather than getting caught up in speculation, Finch said it was an honor that a player like LeBron would even consider Minnesota. He credited the organization's culture, the work done by President Tim Connolly, the relationships throughout the league, and the environment the Timberwolves have built over the past several years. And honestly, that's probably the biggest takeaway from this entire story. Whether LeBron signs with Minnesota or not, the fact that the Timberwolves were even viewed as a legitimate destination says everything about how far this franchise has come. Not long ago, elite superstars rarely mentioned Minnesota in conversations like this. Now they're at least part of the discussion. That alone represents tremendous progress for the organization. There's also one interesting layer that fans haven't forgotten. The Timberwolves eliminated LeBron and the Lakers in the first round of the 2025 NBA playoffs, winning the series convincingly in 5 games. Since then, Minnesota has reached the Western Conference Finals in 2 of the last 3 seasons, establishing itself as one of the NBA's rising powers. So even if LeBron ultimately chooses Cleveland, Miami, Golden State, or even Philadelphia, it doesn't change the bigger picture. The Timberwolves have built something real. They've assembled a roster centered around Anthony Edwards, strengthened it by adding LaMelo Ball, and continue searching for the final pieces needed to chase a championship. Would adding LeBron have been incredible? Absolutely. Could he still surprise everyone until he officially signs somewhere else? You can never completely rule it out. But based on the latest insider reports, Wolves fans probably shouldn't expect Minnesota to be his final destination. At this point, the organization's focus should remain exactly where it belongs: developing the roster they already have, answering all the questions surrounding this new-look team, and proving that this group is capable of competing for an NBA title with or without LeBron James. When you put these two stories together, they actually tell us a lot about where the Timberwolves stand right now. On one hand, this roster is filled with excitement, talent, and legitimate championship potential. But it's also filled with unanswered questions. Can LaMelo Ball stay healthy? Will Anthony Edwards become the dominant two-way superstar everyone knows he can be? Can Jaden McDaniels adapt to whatever defensive role the coaching staff asks of him? Will Rudy Gobert continue anchoring an elite defense at 34 years old? Can young players like Joan Berringer, Jalen Clark, Terrence Shannon Jr., and Isaiah Evans take the next step when the team needs them most? Will veterans like Dante DiVincenzo, Bones Highland, Josh Green, Ayodo and Trey Lyles provide the depth required to survive a long NBA season? Those aren't small questions. They're the kind of questions that separate championship teams from teams that simply have championship talent. Then you add the LeBron story. Would bringing one of the greatest players in NBA history to Minnesota have been an unbelievable move? Of course. But even if the latest reports are right and LeBron ultimately chooses another destination, I don't think Wolves fans should see that as a failure. The fact that Minnesota was even seriously discussed alongside franchises like Cleveland, Miami, Golden State, and Philadelphia says everything about how much respect this organization has earned around the league. That's something this franchise has spent years building. Now it's time to prove that the Timberwolves don't need another superstar to validate what they've created. This team already has one of the NBA's brightest young faces in Anthony Edwards. They've added an elite playmaker in LaMelo Ball. They have one of the best defensive anchors in Rudy Gobert. They have one of the league's smartest executives in Tim Connolly and a coaching staff led by Chris Finch that has already guided this team to multiple deep playoff runs. Now the challenge is simple. Turn all that potential into a championship. Because at the end of the day, nobody is going to remember how close the Timberwolves came to signing LeBron James. People will remember whether this group finally brought a title to Minnesota. And honestly, that's the story that matters most. If you enjoyed today's update, make sure you hit that like button because it really helps the channel grow. And I want to hear from you in the comments. Which storyline are you watching most closely heading into the season? Which player has the biggest question mark? And do you think the Timberwolves still have any realistic chance of landing LeBron James? Or do you believe he's headed to Cleveland, Miami, Golden State, or maybe even Philadelphia? Let's get the conversation going because I read your comments on every video and I love seeing what this community thinks. And if you're a real Timberwolves fan who believes this team has what it takes to compete for a championship, don't forget to subscribe to Timberwolves Daily News. The channel is still brand new and our first goal is reaching 100 subscribers. If you want to be part of this community from the very beginning, now's the perfect time to join us. Thanks so much for watching. Stay safe and as always, go Wolves.